Welcome to another edition of the Best Business Minds, where we interview business leaders and academics that write thought-provoking books. I'm Marc Kramer, a serial entrepreneur who consults with family businesses and entrepreneurs. Please allow me to introduce you to our guest, best-selling author and podcaster, Lou Diamond. Lou, welcome.
Mark, thank you for having me here today. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to be here, excited to chat with you. Always a pleasure.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and I appreciate being on your show for sure. So will you please give us a little bit about your professional background and a little bit about your podcast as well?
Yeah, I love telling people I was put on this planet to work with the most amazing businesses, leaders, and brands and help them thrive through the power of connecting. And I do this through my company called Thrive, where I help companies with sales to better connect to their customers and to better connect. I was a top performing salesperson on Wall Street and consulting before that, even when the internet first came out, working in that particular role. And I recognized that I never really thought it was about sales. I remembered thinking that sales was the wrong title. The reality is that I was always about connecting and establishing a relationship with prospects, clients, accounts that blossomed into many, many sales. So sales was always the result. And what I found really interesting was that I had a unique way of doing this and a different methodology about it. And after years of doing it and then recognizing I could help other businesses, leaders, and brands do the same, I recognized I needed to tell this story a little more. And that's when I wrote Master the Art of Connecting and the skills you need to do that. My podcast is called Thrive Loud, which is featuring those that are thriving in their lives, their businesses, and their passions, which is why we had a guy like Marc Kramer on the program who does that each and every day. And interestingly, it is also an incredible way to connect with people, not just the listeners, but also the guests that we have on the program. And it's been a huge driver and platform that we've created for the business. So the ability to connect and master that connecting is amplified and highlighted on Thrive Loud.
Well, we're super excited to have you. So let's start off with what's the most effective ways to network when you can't meet people in person, which we've been under essentially lockdown since March.
It is amazing, right? Someone once said to me, as we do this meeting here virtually and your viewers come in and look at this, this is a bridge to connect where we are right now, right? I mean, this is not the way we really want to be connecting. We love the in-person connectivity that we can have. But so in this state of where we can be isolated and we're not really in the same room with people, I've always been a big fan of figuring out the best ways to use each one of the mediums that we have to better increase our relationships with people. So it's not just about, I got to be everywhere. I got to be sending out LinkedIn requests to people to add to my network, or I have to be able to get a whole bunch of followers to get me on Facebook or Instagram or other social media platforms, or I should be sending out email lists all the time of updates of what I'm doing. I think all of us recognize that we're a little digitally exhausted, whether it's Zoom fatigue or our email inboxes or checking our phones constantly. We're in front of a screen all the time in this crazy world. So I'm very much about, Mark, making sure that what I sign off my show is you be brief, be bright, be gone in all those forms of communication, and make sure that you have a clear call to action when you're connecting with someone. There should be a purpose where you're not just reaching out selfishly for yourself. You want to be selflessly reaching out to people so that you're offering to help them. Because that is what people need right now. In whatever line of business, you probably have a service that you can help them with, and you can use all these different communications to do it. Can I give you an example, Mark, of things that are annoying me right now and ways you should not connect and network?
And that's one of my questions, for sure.
Is there anything more annoying than receiving these LinkedIn requests from people who you do not know, almost like an instant message thing, and they're basically offering services on how they could help you in this cold call outreach? By the way, it's not just like a really short little message. It's this long instant message in the LinkedIn message platform thing, you have to scroll like 3 or 4 pages to read what this thing is. And you don't know who this person is. And they're selling their whole offerings and whatnot. Meanwhile, what's really interesting is that some people, when they reach out to someone, they really do have something that they can help them with. And there are better tactics on how you can do that. Like just understanding what are your needs right now? What are your problems? As opposed to telling you how I'm the greatest thing in the entire world and I want to show you all my capabilities and you have to pay XYZ to go do it. Nobody wants to be hit this way. And it's happening so many times each day, Mark, that it's part of the reason we're getting very frustrated in finding really good ways to connect in this environment when we're remote. So that's one of my big taboos is this like very cold push outreach that people are doing electronically and specifically on that platform.
So, and this touches on what you've already kind of started. How do you become a trusted connector with people you don't know?
I recognize you have to have one big thing to bring to the table. And that is you have to own what it is that you do really well and how you can help someone. That is the starting point. And what you're trying to do is start a conversation. I'm going to take a quote from a very good colleague and friend of mine, a very well-known speaker, Phil M. Jones. He has this expression when it comes to relationships. You want to ask questions that start conversations that build relationships with the people you do business with. So it all starts with asking a really good question. And that is the opening line for how you can meet someone. It isn't just like, what do you do? Or what is the role that you serve in life? It's maybe more along the lines of, are you looking for help in growing your sales? Are you looking to hire new people into your organizations? Are you looking to grow? These are good questions that obviously, are good questions. And we know they're yes, no answers, but how you want to do it is what you're trying to figure out. So I'm a big fan of every time I meet someone, trying to figure out a problem that they have and can I solve it? And that's how you go about doing it. It starts with asking those questions in a conversation. And that could be like we're having it right now. I love to move people to one-on-one conversations. If you think about when you're in person in a networking event, you have a few minutes to talk to someone. And then you're probably going to move over and talk to somebody else. Mark, in this world, our goal is to take the masses, like from a group like this, and then move it to a one-on-one conversation where we can really understand how we can help one another. I even send out 10-minute meeting invites to people, Mark, because that's not so much to ask of someone to say, hey, I'd love to have 10 minutes to just kind of explain maybe what I do or learn what you do, and maybe we could help each other. That's a great way to not book up a half hour or an hour or a day of somebody's time.
And do you have a different methodology now that we're online doing these online networking events as opposed to when you're live and in person?
So here's the funny thing, Mark. Before COVID, this was the way that I was doing my world anyway. Obviously, I speak and I travel around and I talk about how organizations can better connect, and I work with companies to do that. But the bulk of the consulting work I do is actually working from this environment and helping people thrive virtually. So I was doing this for the last 2 years. And a lot of it was in the communication that we would use, the right sales messaging to use in your language and the emails you might write, or the best way to work with a sales team or a group to better connect and solve problems. I didn't always have to physically be in the room with people. So I was doing this beforehand. So when COVID hit and everybody was doing it this way, I recognized I needed to help a lot of people do virtual better. So that became the big focus of what 2020 was about. I'm standing in this very spot right now in my podcast/office studio. You'll notice here there's like a green screen. I can superimpose lots of things on some of the graphic stuff I have around here to present better the way we do this. There's nothing worse than when someone shares their screen and they become this little small box on the Zoom screen, right? And as opposed to just seeing me on your screen right now, because you're trying to connect with people. We want to break through this glass as best as we can. And that's part of what I do each day. So I've been doing it for a while. So this world has been catered to that. Hybrid world of doing this and being in person, that we can do it better.
So excluding COVID, Do you still carry business cards, or you just do LinkedIn, or you do both?
It's so funny you said this because I saw he's a most prepared person, people. Mark came with a ton of, these are kind of the questions I'm going to ask. And I did skim through this one. When in person, I would bring certain business cards, but I did not like to give business cards in that way normally. Uh, I'm not a big fan of the business card dump. I have this whole theory about when you go to a big trade show, those old sales conferences, which maybe we've gone to, or your industry that you're in, you used to go there and used to leave like with all the swag and the cool things that you
Yeah, I
get,
like
all
the
the little,
swag.
the gadgets and the things that you get from those events. Um, I would find it really interesting that at the end of those trips, I would have stacks of business cards and I go, who are these people? And why did I have their cards? So I was very particular on when I would actually exchange a business card in person. It would be a situation where I already did those things. I had a great question, conversation session with somebody in that environment and knew that there was a follow-up. I'll be honest, I more often than not will exchange something else, a cell number, an email, whatever they prefer. And that's actually really important. I actually will ask the person I'm trying to connect with what their medium of communication they use most. Today, we get too many emails, right? I mean, like just getting an email is enough. But I will say this, that I've found some really interesting ways that people love to communicate. Some people just love to speak on the phone. Some people love to use social media windows. Some people use Slack and they'll communicate that way to communicate. I want to understand what they're most comfortable with. And I want to be on that platform. So as for having business cards, I don't like to give a business card. Like, here's my card and go do it. I actually love to ask for someone's business card. And I think that's really important. In fact, even if you recognize you had a good conversation and you want to take it to the next level with your business cards, I used to be like, would you like my card or can I get your card so that we can follow up and figure out the best way to communicate? So interestingly, I'm out of business cards and I recognize I haven't reordered them. And it's one of the funniest things ever because I'm like, do I need to? Well, I'm hoping to, because I do like going to those events where I can find that person I have a connection with, Mark, and exchange the card.
Yeah, I know most people under the age of 35 just don't even believe in business cards anymore and just believe you'll just exchange on LinkedIn and you'll link in
I
with each
think
other.
LinkedIn is the new, I think LinkedIn is the new business card. And I believe it's really more important than ever that your LinkedIn really represents how you want to be positioned. And I do a lot of work with CEOs and leaders and helping them even better message the way they message themselves. And it says so much more than just a card. So I'm hoping to have the ability to give someone a card in the last case scenario, but odds are it's going to be directing them to some digital medium.
One of the questions we got was someone who wrote, would you like to earn significantly higher yields on your investment assets through special situation investing? And they're wondering, is that a good way to lead into someone?
It sounds too open-ended, doesn't it? It sounds a little bit like, putting that car salesman piece in there.
Yeah.
I want to make, I feel like it's like, would you like a great offering? Like if
Yeah.
you feel that what you're saying is something that could be played at 2 a.m. on some infomercial and car commercial that might get you to buy something, then it probably isn't the right thing to say. Personalizing what you're saying and understanding where they're at. First of all, doing a further drill down with someone to ask them questions to understand exactly where they focus on, who their clients are, the type of work they do, what do they look for in partners is a big thing. What are you looking for? And then if you drill down to that point and they are looking for a need for something that you might be able to fill, that's the right time to say, well, would you be willing to hear what we do and how I might be able to help you? As opposed to, would you like to figure out a solution that could be an end all be all for everybody? If I can make one distinct, Mark, I want to make one distinction.
Yeah, for sure.
In all these situations, it's not about, as I've said, it's not about networking. I have a big network. Everyone here has someone in their network. You need a network. For me, it's connect working. It's to make connections in your network. That's where business gets done. So there is that first step of getting into the network of someone else, but it's truly having a connect working relationship with somebody. It's a word I made up. I like it. I've got a trademark pending, but it is the way that I like to think about the relationship I have with someone, not just networking, to help you trip over those words as you try to say that for the rest of the interview here.
One of the questions is LinkedIn is the most underrated business tools. Do you know how to get your social selling index on LinkedIn?
I do. It's a longer answer because I've actually had to look into it. It's not my specific expertise. There is a certain number of connections that you need to have on LinkedIn to have that ability to do that. There's also another underrated application of LinkedIn is the number of groups that you should be in. The groups feature, interestingly, has gone through an ups and downs and ebbs and flows of activity within LinkedIn. And some of those groups are incredible. And they've gotten so niche, if you would, into specific areas that to become one of those descriptors that you just described in the selling, what do they call it? What's the title that he put it in there? To have that,
Yeah.
Also be involved in
social selling index.
Social selling. You have to be in certain groups as well, as long as having a certain number of networks. But it's not my full expertise with that. I could look up and figure out what we did to do that because I know I'm in that group. My team helped me with that.
How do you use LinkedIn groups? I'm in a lot of LinkedIn groups, and when I've posted, like when having guests on shows, I actually and I'm connected supposedly to literally I total them all up over 3 million.
Yeah.
And I don't see them yielding really anything. And I remember when I had John Chambers, who was a chairman CEO of Cisco Systems.
Yeah.
And he said,
great golfer, by the way.
Yeah. And so he said, he said he hasn't seen much value when his people have used LinkedIn for marketing purposes. He sees a lot of value when people are looking for jobs or looking for people that you're looking to hire, but he hasn't seen where those LinkedIn groups. So do you have a process that you use that has been successful for you? LinkedIn groups?
And it's not only LinkedIn groups, I want to make it clear, you don't want to be in every group. You can't be all things to all people.
Right.
And it is way more important to find your specific niche of who you communicate with. Make it clear whether Mark has an outreach to tap into 3 million people, but he really only needs to tap into 300 people or 30 people that are potentially who we could do business with. It's identifying and understanding that within the community that makes LinkedIn a powerful platform. So my point on the groups is the groups that are very core and specific to what you want to be in. You do not need to be in every single group because you just might wear a hat at one point or another that's in that. You should find the ones that are actively communicating. To what Chambers was discussing, the biggest problem that LinkedIn has as it relates to content is the same issues that Facebook and Twitter have, and that is an algorithm that you are fighting, or Instagram for that matter. And that is, you are only seeing what you're seeing based on the frequency of people that have seen you or followed you very recently, or are constantly posting or always tagging you. So one of the biggest tactics, Mark, that you are very familiar with as part of what I call the Thrive Loud rules when we promote any episode of our show is that I require my guests to post and require and tag us for every episode. And what we do is we have several posts every week regarding promoting the guests on the show, but there are other things that I promote as well for my business. One of my clients I'm doing a workshop for next week, we've been promoting some of the activity they've been doing leading up to it. It's intentional. We're tagging the people that are going to be at that conference because we're now trying to be in their sphere of influence for a short window of time. That will enable us to see the people and the posts that we want more often than not. We have also, and I highly recommend this for your own businesses, for your own report card, aside from your groups and aside from the way you post and tag people, use the recommendations feature in your profile. Your clients, you want your best testimonials of the work that you do, get them to post it in your LinkedIn profile. Let me tell you why. When people have given a recommendation for another, it's almost like the ultimate tagging of somebody in LinkedIn in the algorithm. So someone who's given a recent recommendation, it's almost like new content that comes from that person is going to be pushed to the top. So both giving and receiving recommendations in LinkedIn is going to be a huge way for you to increase that moment of when you've connected to somebody, to get more people to learn about you, find you out that aren't connected to you, and then start following.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Could you ask, one of the questions here is, could you ask a modification of the previous introduction? We provide situation high yielding investment opportunities to an investment only group. I guess they're asking, could have been changed and do better. I also wonder, when you're marketing financial services, there's so many people marketing financial services that I think it's overwhelming. It's almost not unique enough. And really the only people you can promote these things to are people you actually do know, or they turn you off.
So what is the exact question you want me to answer?
So if he shortened what he was doing, is there a better way of him trying to not come across, as you mentioned, kind of like selling cars? Is there a better way, especially for something like financial services, when everybody is pitching those things to you?
Yeah, so let's make it personal, okay? You heard me on the opening of this program say to you that I was put on this planet to work with the most amazing businesses, leaders, and brands and help them thrive through connecting. Okay, it took me a long time to figure this out, but that is what I do. That is literally my purpose. And by the way, it's a way more engaging way to start a conversation than to say, I'm a growth consultant that specializes in a certain niche or area. The reality is that's what I do. So to distinguish yourself from financial services, spin the conversation around, what is it that you love about what you do? And tell people about it. I love to call this, you need to unleash your superpower. And in LinkedIn, you could do it as that first line descriptor of what you do. You've got some title. Marc's got some amazing things on his bio at LinkedIn, but there's that other piece that says exactly your statement. That statement is your uniqueness to the world. That is why people do business with you. That is why they want to connect with you. That is why you are trying to promote yourself out there, because you have something to offer that's going to make this world better. I'd rather do something with a superhero than I would a regular average Joe. We all love superheroes. Make your superhero the thing that you lead with when you connect with someone. And I trust you, people want to know more. They want to dig in and understand what it is that you do. These aren't easy things to do, by the way, to figure it out. You may need help. You may need a coach to help unearth what that is. You may need your friends to figure it out. I do a lot of exercise with my clients to help do this. But to get your superpower, to lead with it and unleash it, is really something that gets you to stand out from your competition and from other people in your space.
How do you handle ghosting when an individual starts to go silent?
Ghosting in that which way? That if I keep reaching out to somebody and
Yeah,
nobody's
like
responding to me?
like they've reached out to you as a prospect and you responded, but then, and it seems like you're having a back and forth, and then all of a sudden you just stop.
Yeah, when does the rhythm of the sale or the rhythm of the relationship dry up? I always love to ask this question. Were you doing all the things that connected? In the book, I talk about the power of empathy and Master the Art of Connecting. When you connect with someone, it isn't so much about what you've got going on in your world. If this is what your circle represents, this is your world, and this is the person you're trying to target. And when you're meeting with someone and you're having interactions and you didn't quite connect, it sounds like that's what that is. You didn't connect. You had a back and forth. You got like this close. You networked, if you would. You got close and you touched with one another. The two circles kind of like pointed, but they never really passed the barrier, never really got connected into each other. And I always say, well, why is that? Well, why that is because you probably did not do something that is essential towards bringing these worlds together and having them overlap. And that is to stand in the shoes of the person you're trying to connect with and see things from their world. Get into their world and understand what they're all about. Don't talk about you. Ask questions about how you're going to help them. What's going on in their world over here that you can help? What are the things that you can do to make this person's world better? Odds are, if you didn't make this merge and you didn't connect, you would have seen it by the ghosting. You would have seen it. You would have been here. You only talked maybe about yourself and something. Well, they're not, they just don't fit into my world right now. And that's why ghosting happens, because if you do fit into the world and you recognize that you're going to solve a problem for the person you're trying to connect with, they're not going to ghost you. They're going to add you into your world, and you're not going to have to worry about that. So when you get ghosted, you have to look back at your communications and say, was I doing the best job to step into their shoes and understand things from their world?
And Lou, it sounds like also good dating advice.
You know, it's so funny. This morning, I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend, Mindy Barnett. Mindy had me on her show. I'm looking at it right here. I was on early this morning, forming a connection with context. She has a show called, I think, The Race for the Ring. And it's very true. That would be the same thing for dating. Isn't this true about connections?
Yeah, of course.
We're trying to make connections personally. It shouldn't be any different in the way that we're doing business. We are humans. We're trying to do business with humans. We're not AI apps or bots that are coming in and trying to just pull your product off the shelf. We're trying to do something where we're providing a service that is going to help another human being on this planet. And that's what we're here to do. So if we're not doing that each and every day, we're not living up to the best persons that we can be. We're not embodying that superpower that we were put on this planet to live up to.
One of the listeners said, I was told that too many recommendations is detrimental. Is that true, or doesn't sound like it from your comment?
That's a great point. I think it also depends on what these recommendations say. I don't know what's on my profile. You can all go look it up afterwards on LinkedIn and see. There's like 30 some odd really good recommendations, but they're meaty and they're specific to how I helped that person. I don't know if you have like 7 million recommendations. I don't know what those people are saying, but remember in LinkedIn, you actually have to write something. And it's got to be unique. So my thought in the LinkedIn environment is that it's probably pretty valuable. I actually take the ones that are the best from LinkedIn and I put them on my own website so that people can see that, because they probably really were a great client and a great relationship. So I'm hoping that helps understand. I don't know if having that many recommendations matters, but when people read those recommendations and they have some real good meat to them and they're specific, they're going to help you with your business and help you grow your business to a referral point.
I think the key point there was meaty. If they just say you're a great guy or a great lady, that's nothing. But if they can be specific about what you've done for them,
I would delete those.
Yeah, right. Of course. Are there cultural
and what I would say to you is, you can, when you ask for, oh, sorry, I was just going to just one more point on that, Mark. If you're going to ask somebody for a recommendation, in LinkedIn, you have the ability to actually provide what that recommendation is. So maybe you can even say, hey, can you say something about the work we just did on this project? So you can make it really specific. And that will be very helpful to getting a good recommendation that's meaty. Sorry, Mark, continue.
No, you're right. And that's a good point for them. Are there cultural rules when networking in other countries? As I mentioned, we have listeners from 31 countries. So are there different rules?
Yeah. So my favorite rule, of course, I used to work on Wall Street and I did a ton of business in Japan. And Japanese culture is very unique. And obviously they were way ahead of us without handshaking. They were bowing way ahead of time. So whether the handshake culture is gone or not, TBD on that. But a lot of Asian cultures will bow and nod when you're saying something, and you might interpret that as they're totally getting what I'm saying. They totally are in agreement with me. They're nodding. That's not always the case. So I always like to make sure that I clarify in different cultures to make sure that we bridge that communication gap. I also did a lot of business in Norway, and they're much less vocal in the way they communicated, very terse in the way they speak. And I have interpreted that initially as cold and standoffish, but in reality, it's not. It's just a culture piece. What I would recommend is, if you're going or you have to do businesses with those other cultures, ask over clarification questions. Don't assume anything. Always just jump out and make sure that you're really penetrating and being clear. So whether it's the visual context that you're understanding or language communication issues, just be clear and be clear. Don't go off with assumptions after those relations. So yes, cultures do matter, and cultures are important because it also helps you adapt the way you communicate and the way you connect, stepping into their shoes so you could see things and communicate in ways that they best understand and can relate to.
So, one of the things you write about, you talked about the concept of connecting core. How do each of the four parts work? Talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't believe this initially. And I recognize this is, I bet you all think there are some people who are just natural connectors. They're naturally the ability to pull people in. You've probably even heard, oh, that person's a natural salesperson or a natural this or that. This is true that some people are born with more natural tendencies than others. But as it relates to our ability to connect, we all have what I call muscles, the connecting core muscles that we all can work on like a good workout that enable us to better connect to other people in the world. And that's actually part of the reason why I wrote Master the Art of Connecting, because I figured out what these muscles were. And the muscle I actually call is the SAFE, SAFE. Think of it like a really cool, like tight 4-pack instead of a 6-pack, if you would, right? The reality is, you know this, if you are a physically fit person in life and you strengthen your core, you could do lots of things. You can run very far. You can start climbing. You could start doing other exercises or races or activities, because it all starts at that strong core that you need to work out. And everyone knows we need to do that to be successful physically. In connecting, it's the same thing. So these 4 muscles, if you work on them each and every day, will enable you to be better at connecting with others. With me so far, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 4 muscles, you want me to go through each one of them? Is that
Yeah. Yes, please.
So SAFE, and I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to start with the E. The E is the power of empathy, and we already talked about it. The ability to step into the shoes of another and see things from their world. Focus on them. And how do we do that best? By listening. We should be listening more and talking less. And one of the best ways to work out this muscle, just for a show of hands here, how many of these do we have? Everyone say? We have 2. We have 2 of these. How many of these do we have? 1. Use them proportionally. You should be listening twice as much as you should be speaking to anybody. This is so important that when you're in a conversation, you should be asking more questions. When you're asking questions, you're going to get those responses, and those responses are going to then be able to formulate how that person's world, what it looks like. And we need to do this by listening better. There's a whole exercise I do about listening, but one of the muscles about doing this is E, the power of empathy. F, a fearless mindset. And that means moving through fear into courage. Sounds really weird, but I know that there are people that will go onto these calls and are even afraid to ask a question. I've seen it. They're like, I don't want to ask that question. It might sound stupid. Maybe I'm not going to sound like I know what I'm talking about. Fear is something that holds us back, and we all have them. I have them, you have them, we all have them. It isn't fearless, like we're void of fear. Fearless is understanding what those fears are and knowing how to move through it into a place of bravery, into courage. And the way we do this is by taking a fear and spinning it on its head. If I don't ask the question to a client because I think it's silly or stupid, and it turns out that that was exactly the thing I needed to know, well, then I'm not going to get the answer I need. So why not ask it? There's nothing wrong with a bad question. There is no such thing as a bad question. If I have a fear of following up with someone, this is my favorite. You know what the biggest fear in sales is? The biggest fear, Mark, in sales is the fear of hearing the word no. N-O. We hate being rejected. I'm going to tell every single person, all 80 some odd people live here on this call, Mark, I love the word no. I live for the word no. I want you to get to know faster. If someone doesn't want to do business with me, I want to hear it right up front that we're not going to make this connection. We're not going to get into each other's world. We're not going to do business. I want to know it now so I can focus on getting more of the S's. I've had salespeople work for me who literally are afraid to pick up the phone to call someone because there's a chance they might say no. But meanwhile, they keep it on their sales pipeline because there is a slight chance that maybe they're going to call me back and say yes. The more time that goes on with that, Mark, the less likely they're going to say yes. So I want to get to know faster. don't be afraid of the word no. You need to have a certain number of rejections to do business with somebody. Basically, if you go out and throw out 100 opportunities, it's going to funnel down to about 20 real opportunities. And in that 20, there's a certain percentage that you're actually going to do business with. So you're going to get a lot of no's. Embrace them, get to them. Don't be afraid of the word no, love it, because it's going to get you to the yeses faster. That's an example of one of the fears, moving to courage. The last two I'll buckle together to make your show a little bit tighter here, Mark. A is for authenticity, and the S we already addressed, which is your super why, your superpower. Authenticity, make it clear, nobody wants to connect with someone that is not being authentic. The ultimate popping the pin of the balloon of a relationship is somebody lying to someone, someone telling someone that it isn't what it is, someone pretending to be something or pretending to deliver something and not delivering on it. We want to be real. If we can't do something, we should let someone know that that's not in our sweet spot. Or at least let them know, I don't know right now. But if we start to make up a story and then it falls back on us, they will remember that till the day they die. And they will literally hold that up to them as knowing you're not going to be authentic. Authenticity of the connecting core is the linchpin. Without it, it doesn't work. And lastly, Mark asked the super why. We talked about at the beginning, that's your superpower. That is living and breathing your superpower each and every day, what you are born on this planet to do. And in your job, your opportunity, whatever that is, you got to make that thing shine and lead with the superpower, lead with that muscle of your super why, the why you're on this planet. Embrace all four of those muscles, the SAFE. You have one person that everyone wants to connect to because they are empathetic to what you do. They are fearless in the way they go about their business. They are real as the day is long, and they are someone super that you want to connect with. That's your connecting core, Mark.
I remember when I went through sales training and very experienced salesperson would often say, a no is as good as a yes for the reasons that you've outlined here. But someone also wrote, maybe is the worst. Because that just leaves you hanging. So you want to get to that yes or no, so you don't put them. And oftentimes, business development people.
Today's best business minds. I usually participate once a month, learn from the best.
I think someone's on your call and they're calling in. We have a caller, Mark.
Yeah. If everybody could please put yourself on mute, that would be awesome. Yeah, so maybe is probably the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, when I hear maybe or I'm not sure yet, I go, tell me what's going to get me to a no.
Right.
As opposed to saying, tell me what's going to get to a yes, because that seems a little bit, tell me what's not going to make this happen. And you won't believe what you'll hear, because that actually is a little bit of a trick and an advantage, because it puts you in a position where they're going to be like, well, you've only had X number of experiences doing this. I'm like, you know what, you're right, but guess what? It's going to give me more focus of doing business on you. Every time you can hear that.
One of the things I always ask in the beginning of a meeting, especially when I'm helping entrepreneurs raise capital or I'm raising capital for my own stuff, is why did you agree to meet with me? And that usually gives me an idea of which direction I should go into with them. And it gets them on your side, because they say, here's why I agreed to meet with you. And already you started off in a positive way. The only time that didn't work is the CEO of McCormick Foods set me up with his top executives. And I asked that question. And somebody said, we didn't want to meet with you. The CEO made us meet with you. So we were already like below ground trying
and I go, you know what I would say at that point? I'd say, look, at that point, I would say, I go, listen, can I get a discount on the bay leaves or the flavors? That's what I would look for. I goes, can I get any type of products here from McCormick? No, it's totally important to recognize that get to that no, get done, because the one thing we cannot change, the variable in our lives, is time. And therefore, there's only so much of it we have. We want to make the most valuable connections, not the most connections, the most valuable connections to our lives. And I think that's a real important thing to somebody who said, it doesn't matter if you have 6 billion followers or you have 6. I know people who are non-existent in any social media sphere, and trust me, they don't need any more connections as it relates to dollars, because they found out where their space is. Figure out where you need to be to own that space so it's most valuable to you.
There's a great story in your book, and I want you to retell the story. You wrote about a sales meeting you observed,
Yeah.
and could you briefly tell that story and that the audience could learn from it? Because I've seen so many of these kinds of stories, even with seasoned salespeople. It blows my mind. So can you tell that story and what you told them?
So just to be clear, I am a speaker and I love to present and I love to give great presentations. And having been a salesperson has made that ability natural to the way that I speak. So I'm very charismatic when I talk. But it doesn't always need to be the other way around, meaning the sense that some salespeople will go into sales meetings and will feel that it's a presentation and a show. So a CEO hired me to go to a specific sales meeting and sit in and observe because we were assessing how to help this sales team go. We go into the meeting. I was like kind of a fly on the wall on site at the client. There was the salesperson, there was an account person, there was a technology person in the room, and myself. And they were helping with all the solutions and they were giving this presentation. They give a presentation and they leave. And we're in the car now heading back to the office. We get back to the office and in the car, I want you to imagine these guys were fist pumping, high fiving, chest bumping, if that was able to be done at the time. This was a great meeting. And I was a little confused because when we got back, the CEO had already heard. I heard there was a great meeting that took place over at this. And I now had the door closed and they were no longer there. I go, I would like to make something clear that we have a difference on what great is and what isn't meeting. Because this might have been the least effective sales meeting I've ever been to in my life. Let me summarize as quickly as I can. All they talked about was how great they were as a company and the great things they need to do. They never asked a question to anyone attending the meeting at the client. They just kind of ran through the PowerPoint march of death, if you've ever been through one of these, going through every capability and all the great things that they've done for other clients and the things that they do that are awesome and why you should hire me, we to do this. And never did they engage with the client, or more notably, did they give a clear call to action at the end of the meeting to say, what's next? It was like basically a dog and pony show, legitimately like, here's the great things that we do. Here's what we have. It's awesome. You should love it. Thank you for having us. Good night. That's basically how the meeting went. And it was so important to recognize how it isn't about you in the meeting. It is not about presenting your best opportunities, what you've done for somebody else. In fact, my favorite thing is, the logo slide, the infamous logo slide that says, here's everybody that we've worked for, right? It shows every logo that all the companies you've done work for, right? I want to make it clear. You know what that slide really says? Here's everybody that isn't you. This is everybody that's not you. You're not on this list. That's where it puts them mentally. Like, I'm not in this club. I'm out of the club. The only logo that you should have on any sales presentation in any meeting is the client that you're pitching to right then and there, them. Understanding who they are. And if they ask, who have you worked for? You could pull that out of your back pocket or from the appendix slide, and they could see, and they can go to your website and learn what you've done. You need to figure out that first meeting is not a presentation of what you do. It's not a show. That meeting is a chance for you to learn how you're going to solve their problem. That's it. Because it's in that meeting that you're going to find out whether you can or you can't. And that's the difference between winning the business and going on a trail of who knows how long to keep something on your pipeline to keep people interested.
That's a great story because there was a well-known accountant in Philadelphia, a partner of one of the major firms, and I ran this organization where there were 15 guys who ran public companies and 17 members on the board. 15 of them had this one accountant. And so I asked them, why did you choose this accountant? And they said, all the other accounting firms, when we brought them in, they all started by talking about their firm. And he started by asking us to talk about our business and our problems and how we're dealing with it. We had to pull it out of him what his firm could deliver for us. because he kept asking us more and more questions. And the interview, which was supposed to be a half an hour, ended up being over 2.5 hours. Each one of them said the same story.
Yep.
And here he was sitting with 15 public companies as clients, and nobody could, if he came in, it was the death knell for any of the other accounting firms. They just even hated hearing the fact that he visited some firm that was already a client of theirs. And I think this goes to my next question about, you talk about the concept of ask and listen and tell and talk. Talk about that.
Correct. We live in a world where we need to be in the asking world. Okay, there's this ask tell matrix that I love to describe to people. And if we are like that group that went up there and just tell everybody everything, how many of you remembered, like, you know, when your mother tells you when you're a young kid to clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room. The room never seems to get clean because all they kept getting it is told and told and told and told every single time. But yet, if you spin the conversation and you ask nicely, like when my parents came to visit recently and my son's room was an absolute flying tornado, I remembered and said, what do you think your grandmother would think if she saw your room like this? And I remembered my son saying, oh, well, it probably would be completely disappointed. And the room somehow magically got clean. I didn't say, go clean your room. I basically put it on them to ask a question, because a question is empowering. And too often as connectors, we think we need to tell someone something to be powerful. We think because we were in a role, like when we were little kids, like teachers or even doctors, when they told us something and they knew what they were talking about, we accepted it as that's right. And we feel that that's a position that empowers us. But think how powerful you are when you ask powerful questions, like what great consultants do, what great therapists do. They ask questions, whether they know the answers or not. If you lead from asking, you're going to use these twice as much as you are this. You're going to be speaking less and hearing the solution that you can cater your responses to, and speeding up the meeting, quicken the connection, and move things along faster so that you can determine if we're going to do business or not.
So one of the things you mentioned in your book, which I thought was really interesting, is that your research, what do CEOs say is the biggest sales challenge, and what is the common element?
Yeah, the biggest, well, I'm trying to remember. I said a bunch of things that they said were the biggest challenge. Do you remember my answer on that? Just so you could lead me in the right direction? No, just
Now I'm stumped here.
That's called a stall for people.
Yeah.
The biggest problem that salespeople have as it relates to CEOs is that they're not specifically gearing their conversation to them. That is the reality, that the reality of that is where they're going. They're not directing it to specifically where they need it to be. And I'd also argue that salespeople are afraid to fail on this. They're afraid of that fear when they go into meetings. And if you have a sales force that's a little bit afraid of failure, they're not going to be the ones that win for you. So I'd lean it to that you need it on that piece of it. I know that was not the main piece you were trying to direct to. There's a whole chapter about that.
Yeah, but this also leads me to ask you the second one, which I thought was really interesting. Talk about the 2-minute compact pitch and how that was successful for you, because I thought that was very interesting.
Okay, so I used to be the head of sales for Organic, a company still around today. And this is right when the internet was first coming out and people were building the first websites and the first e-commerce platforms that were out there, late 90s, early 2000. This is right around 2000. And there was a huge process. Compaq was looking for a new agency of record. And they sent it out to the top 20 agencies that were in this space. And we all had to fill out one of those RFPs, if any of you have ever been through this, request for proposal. And it got drilled down, and then there was a second set that went to the 10 people that were out there, and we made that cut. And then after making the cut of 10, it got drilled down to 5 companies that were going to go present in person. This was great. We got to go down to Compact, it's now owned by HP, but this was down in Houston, Texas. We were one of the selected ones to go, which was great. The bad news was we were going to present dead last. Here's why this was bad. We had to fly everyone down there. My CEO came from San Francisco. We asked him to come to the meeting. My team was based in New York, and we flew down there the night before. And the other companies were presenting for 2 hours, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning each, all throughout the day, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 2, all the way through. And we were going at the very end at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Anyone could put this in the chat room. Can you imagine what those people looked like after 4 presentations? Anyone want to think? You think they were happy? They were hangry, great word. They were fried. They were mentally spent. That whole night before in the day, we had a perfect pitch planned out. Every one of me and 4 other team members were going to be presenting, and we were going to be up there presenting our best capabilities. Right before we're about to walk in, I saw the 25 people on the selection committee in that room and what they looked like, that hangry description that someone just typed in the chat room. I said, I pulled the team together. I go, guys, you're going to have to trust me on this. I'm calling an audible. I'm changing what we're going to do. Just go with me. So we walk into the room. We line all up. I said, very kindly, thank you so much for having us here. We are delighted that we made this part of the selection round. We know that you're exhausted from hearing 4 other companies go through all the reasons why they're going to be the best agency for you. I brought my entire team here and our CEO from San Francisco to show the support we have for the organization. Before we begin, do any of you have any questions from the proposal that we submitted? It's silent for like 3 seconds, and the technology guy in the back row asked some specific question about page 23 that a tech guy would do. And my tech guy answered his question very quickly, very succinctly. I said, if there are no more questions, we want to thank you for having us. We want to get out of your hair because we know you're tired, and we want to start working with you because we know we're ready as our work has shown, and we can't wait to begin. Thanks for having us. And we walked out. So we walk out of the room, and there were 2 thoughts that went in my head. One, I was going to be fired. The CEO of San Francisco, from our firm from San Francisco, flew in, and I did not enable him to say one word. He took out his BlackBerry at the time, and he was typing what I'm pretty sure was my letter that I was going to be fired by "See you later, Lou." We're on our way to the airport, and the other thought that I had in my head was that I knew I was right. I had a gut feeling inside that said to me, I could sense and listen to this room that I wanted to connect with them. I was establishing a connection from all the time I was working, that they were tired, and anything we said would have never worked. So what was most important was catering to them at that moment. Our cab on the way to the airport, all of a sudden my cell phone rings, one of those big Motorola flip phone things. You guys remember those? You had to flip it up and pull the antenna up. And I pull the antenna up on what analog connection it is. And it's the head of marketing from Compact. And she goes, Lou, in your haste, when you left, somebody here left their briefcase in the conference room. And I stopped and I said, oh my God. And sure enough, our COO on my team, he left his briefcase there because he couldn't believe we're leaving. And she goes, should I ship it back to New York, or should you turn around and come get it and sign our letter of agency of record to be the agency to work with us? Congratulations, you won the business. I closed the thing and folded it up, and I screamed to the cab driver, turn the effing car around, go back, get back there. The CEO is backspacing on his BlackBerry to delete the message that's probably firing me. And we get back in there, and that CTO, that technology guy that asked that one question with champagne handing to us as we arrived, he says, do you know why we hired you? And in a moment of silence, we just said, no, what was the main reason? And they said, if they're this considerate during this pitch process of how we're feeling now, just think how great it's going to be to work with them.
I love that story. I really love that story. I have a similar story that goes to your authentic. I was once pitching to Unisys, a large corporation, and during the pitch, we were meeting with 3 women and a man, all senior executives at Unisys. And as we're making the pitch, my oldest daughter calls and I see on the phone that she's calling. And anytime my kids call, I stop what I'm doing, I take the call. So I take the call, and my partner is 10 years older than me. He is like ready to kill me and say, excuse me, my daughter's calling, give me a minute. So I walk out of the room, I tell my daughter, hey, I'm in the middle of a meeting. Is it an emergency? She said, no. So I call her back. So I go back in, we finish the pitch, and my partner is red. His head is going to explode. He waits till we get in the car and he reams me out. And I said, listen, I don't care. If my kids are calling, I'm taking that call. So the next day we get a call from Unisys, and the woman says, can you get your partner on as well? And I said, yeah. He comes in the room, and she goes, I want to tell you that we were so impressed that you walked out of the room and took your daughter's call, that we're giving you the business.
Yeah.
The only thing that was happened was that he gave me the two middle fingers, but we got their business, and that helped get the company started. So
it's most important to be, and if there's one message from it all, and by the way, I give the caveat, please do not do this in every single sales meeting that you have. The ability to read the room, the ability to empathize and step in and see what everyone else is seeing is what great connectors do. Each of you has that muscle in you, that power of empathy to empathize with everyone. Step in and do that, and you will have better relationships and connections and grow and connect work with more people than you'll ever imagine if you embrace that ability to understand what others are feeling at that moment.
So Lou, we got a few more minutes left. I want to ask you, and I think everybody has this, how do you get over the fear of talking about price?
I'm gonna steal something from you that from another colleague of mine who does this. I'll leave his name out. But how many of you know about there's two things that you provide, right, when you have a price for something? If you stick the price right up in front of somebody, and this is price in this hand, and this is the value that you're going to deliver behind it, well, what do you see? All you see is the price, and you can't see the value here. But if you switch this around and I put value first, and I show you everything that I'm going to give you and how it's going to make you grow and make your business be better, how it's going to save you money, how I'm going to provide you the guidance you need, whatever your business and service line is. When you're giving value first, the pricing is secondary. Most people do not say no to someone because of price.
100%.
They say no because what they need right now and the value that's being presented to them is not on the level that they're expecting. And that is where business gets done. If you know you're going to get great value for something, you're going to take it no matter what the price is. So I make this clear, and that's why I joke about these bad tactics of what I've seen. I had someone send me a cold email yesterday and just threw a number out at me at some value of what it was, but they didn't know if it was going to give value to me. So value first is where you lead with the pricing behind it, and you will have a much easier time communicating that conversation.
So maybe I should ask you this one, and we have 2 minutes left. How do you develop what you call the fearless mindset?
Spin every fear on its head. I addressed it earlier, but it's this simple. If you have a fear, you have 3 steps that you can do it. 1, identify what it is. Identify the fear, give it a name. Fear of hearing no, fear of rejection, fear of losing the sale, fear of failure. Give it a name. 2, know what that fear is and when it pops up. Understand its familiarity. It comes up in sales situations. It comes up when I talk about price. It comes up when I have to go give my sales meeting internally. Understand the circumstances that this identified fear comes with. And then take the fear and spin it upside down. Don't make the fear overwhelming, meaning upside down, like, okay, put it on its head. So if I'm afraid of hearing the word no, well, no might be a yes, but no, also getting to it faster is going to enable me to not have to worry about the same. That's the flip thing, those 3. Identify it, understand the circumstances, flip it on its head.
Lou, you were awesome. I know everybody enjoyed it because only 3 people didn't stay to the very end. So that's impressive.
Now here they drop off, right?
Yeah.
Mark, truly a pleasure. And if anyone wants to find me, I'll just give my own selfish plug here. Everywhere in social media,
course.
follow me at Thrive Loud. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. You'll find me the same way on thriveloud.com. And go listen to my episode with Marc Kramer. It killed it. It was spectacular. He was awesome. But there's many other programs there. And I mean, if your organization needs help and do the stuff that I have, that's where you can reach me and I'll connect.
Well, Lou, if it's okay with you, I'll put your email out to everybody, if that's okay.
Please do.
Okay.
Absolutely. Would love to help.
Yep. Sounds great. Hope you'll write another book and we'll have you on again.
You got it, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Have a great
Thank you,
weekend.
everybody.
Please stay safe. Bye, everybody. Please stay safe.
Will do.